Like we said, the topic is for this year's camp is Asa Ki Vaar. So I was really happy when I found out this was the topic because this is a central bani within Guru Granth Sahib Ji. So this contains some of our core beliefs that we believe in these things, but we may not know where they come from in Gurbani. So we'll go over that. A lot of what we already know, what we believe, comes from Asa Ki Vaar. So let's start with, first of all, what is a var? So why is it called Asa Ki Vaar? So var just means in Punjabi a heroic song or an ode to honor heroes and legends. So these are commonly sung to honor warriors, to honor kings, to kind of show their glory to the masses. So they were commonly sung in folk tunes so that these would easily catch on. Now, the Gurus understood the power of music. That's why all of Gurbani is in rags. And this is actually another aspect of their magnificence in that they also not only incorporated rags, but also folk tunes so that Gurbani could be sung by the common person. But Gurus changed this. So rather than honor heroes, legends, kings, which are temporary and pass away, the Gurus honored God through the Vars, God's eternal glory through these Vars. So Asa Ki Vaar is one of 22 Vars in Guru Granth Sahib Ji. And if we read Guru Granth Sahib Ji carefully, each Var has a separate folk tune assigned to them. And the folk tune for Asa Ki Vaar is called Tunde Asraje Ki Tuni. Basically, there was a king named Asraja, and he was Tundar, he was disabled, but he was very famous throughout the lands for his deeds. And so people sang a folk tune in honor of him. So the Gurus chose this tune, but said, let's sing Gurbani on this tune. So Asa Ki Vaar contains 24 pauris. So pauris are basically 5 or 6 lines whose summary is usually the last line of the pauri, summarizes the meaning of the pauri. And it also has associated sloks. Sloks are basically complete thoughts that kind of talk about a certain subject. It could be a spiritual subject, it could be a social subject, but sloks and pauris are combined, and there are 24 pauris. And Guru Arjan Dev Ji gave the Asa Ki Vaar its final form in Gurbani. And all of Asa Ki Vaar only has the Bani of 2 Gurus, our first and second Gurus, Guru Nanak Dev Ji and Guru Angad Dev Ji. So why is Asa Ki Vaar important? So like we were saying, this contains the essential teachings of Sikhi. It also has both a spiritual and a social message. So it not only concerns itself with our spiritual life and how to live our life, but also how society can function best. Certain practices that were part of that society, and in fact, which are still part of our society today, that are against the teachings and the vision of the Guru. And these are very practical. The Asa Ki Vaar teaches us both the problem as well as the solution. It teaches us the danger of rituals, shows us the Guru's fearless spirit. Keep in mind, this was a society that was heavily divided by both social status, the caste system, as well as religion. And it's unique among all of Gurbani. When we hear that Guru Arjan Dev Ji nu Tatti Tavite, he was executed on the hot plate, or Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji was executed, they weren't executed just because of a haphazard reason or just political conflicts. Politics was a part of it, but it was these ideas in Banis like Asa Ki Vaar, which reached the ears of people who were in positions of power and made them afraid that the Gurus were empowering the masses. So this really does, it's unique among all of Gurbani, and it shows the Guru's fearless spirit. Now, what are some of the spiritual messages within Asa Ki Vaar? Of course, the importance of the Guru. Most Banis in Guru Granth Sahib Ji start with the importance of the Guru. It also talks about our beliefs on God, the relationship between the world and God, the role of mankind within all of creation. It answers the question, what happens after death? How many times have we heard questions when, during religious diversity journeys, or when we're talking about Sikhi with children from other schools, that they'll ask, what does your religion believe happens after death? This will actually give us the quotes from Gurbani, which teaches us what Gurbani says happens after death. It also gives us the diagnosis, the source of all problems. It gives us very practical, usable life lessons on service and good deeds. And it talks about the power and the glory of God's name on the spiritual journey. So, what are the social messages kind of summarized? If we had to just remember a few things about the social message, what are they? So, first of all, no priests are necessary to reach God. Gurbani teaches a direct relationship with God. Anybody from any background, any religion, any race, any caste can reach God directly, and everybody is equal. And the service of God is the highest ideal for mankind. And gurus define this service also. And the social message also tells us, being inspired by the gurus, to fearlessly speak the truth. Don't be intimidated by somebody's status or power, because as a Sikh, it's our duty to speak the truth. Now, let's start with this, just understanding at a global level. So, what are rituals? What is a ritual? A ritual is anything that looks like a shortcut to God, but doesn't lead anywhere. And it's usually recommended by priests for their own benefit. For example, if we hire somebody to do a ritual worship, if we say that I'm going to give you money and you do worship in my name, and I will get the benefit of that worship, or certain pilgrimage, ritual bathing, donations for personal gain. All of these things are defined as any religious act that looks like a shortcut but doesn't lead to any sort of personal transformation. So if we really want to understand this, Gurbani gives us two criteria that these come from Asa Ki Vaar and other banis, that how do we decide that something is a ritual versus something that's a true religious action? So first of all, does it involve naam? Does it involve glorification of God, singing God's praises, reciting Waheguru? If it does, then it's not a ritual. And second one, does it lead to personal transformation? Does it change us? For example, if we bathe at a holy place and we don't strive for godly virtues, that could be a ritual. If we donate to charity and feel proud about the donation, that's also a ritual. So does that action lead us to godly virtues? If the answer to both these questions is no, then according to the Asa Ki Vaar, the action is a ritual. So even actions that look religious or seem noble can fall under the category of ritual. Now, we've all heard sakis of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, where he kind of identifies certain rituals. So people doing prayer, but their mind is somewhere else. So that prayer is not leading to any personal transformation. So that's a ritual. Or people doing ritual worship in a temple without being emotionally involved in the worship, or without reciting God's name. Any type of worship that either doesn't lead to any personal change or doesn't involve naam, those can be considered a ritual. So, for example, we all wear a kada. The reason the kada, some people, if we don't know why we're wearing it, that can also be a ritual. But if we know that the kada is so that whenever we do something, we're reminded of the Guru and we're reminded of our responsibility to the Guru, then that kada helps us in our spiritual journey. So hence, that's not a ritual. Okay, whenever we want to understand any bani, we go to the Rahao. Rahao is the central idea of the Shabad. So what is the central idea of all of Asa Ki Vaar? It is this Shabad. Dukh daru sukh rog paya jan sukh tam na hoi, tu karta karna main nahi, jaho kari na hoi, balehari kudrat vasya, tera ant na jai lakhya. So the message can be summarized with this. So, Balehari Kudrat Vasya means I am a sacrifice to God, the one who dwells within all creation. Tera ant na jai lakhya. God's end cannot be known. So Guruji talks about the vastness of God and the fact that God is everywhere and is not separate from creation. He also says, Dukh daru sukh rog paya, jan sukh tam na hoi. Dukh or suffering is the medicine. And sukh or pleasure is the disease, because in pleasure, there's no movement towards God. When we suffer, we move towards God because we try to find a way out of the suffering. And in the Shabad, Guruji also talks about how God is the all-powerful creator and doer, and whoever praises God crosses over the world ocean. Now, in this vast Bani, 24 bodies, why did Guruji make this the central idea? Because if God is everywhere, is within all creation. Wherever we look, there is God, even if we can't see him. We don't need any intermediary to see God because God is readily available. The only thing we need is the Guru's guidance. This is why this is the central idea. It tells us the goal, which is God, and which is who God is present everywhere. Now, if we go to the very beginning of Asa Ki Vaar, to understand Asa Ki Vaar, we start at the very beginning. It starts with the glory of the Guru. What is the function of the Guru? Guruji says, Balihari Gur Apne, Deohari Sadvar. I am a sacrifice to the Guru. Why? Jin manas te devte kiye karat na lagi baat. Manas means human, devte means godlike. Who transforms mere humans into godlike beings. Karat na lagi baat means in an instant. The Guru doesn't take any time. When we surrender to the Guru, it's not a factor of time. It's a factor of how much have we surrendered to the Guru. So the Guru allows us to, the Guru opens us to our eyes so that we can see the God that's everywhere. Without the Guru's teachings, even though God being everywhere, God is not known to us. So the Var emphasizes this transformation through the Guru and through Nam and through living a virtuous life. But the Guru is the most important on the spiritual journey. Without the Guru, no spiritual progress is possible. That's why the Asa Ki Vaar starts with this. What is the first body? The first body is Apine Aap Sajyo, Apine Rachyo Now. So we'll go over the meaning of this. So this is where oftentimes we're asked at camps or we're asked by, in the RDJ journeys, what do you believe about the creation of the world? Or what are our beliefs about God? So this is, Asa Ki Vaar explains the Sikh beliefs about the creation of the world. Apine Aap Sajyo. First, God created himself. God does not have any creator because he himself is the creator. Apine rachyo now. Then he created his name. So his name, Nam, is God's characteristics. Basically, those characteristics through which God is known. We can't know God unless we know Nam. So God is only known through his name, his characteristics. Dui kudrat sajye. So first God was created himself, then he created the name. Then through the power of Nam, he created the Kudrat, which is nature. Kar asan ditto chow. And he created an asan or a seat for himself within creation, and he watches with chow or interest. What do we learn from this? So God is not separate from creation. So it's not that God is sitting up there in heaven on his throne with a white beard. God is everywhere and he's merged within creation. If we have the eyes to see, we can see God within creation. And he's not indifferent. It's not that God doesn't care about us. He's watching everything with interest. So this answers some of the basic Sikh beliefs. Some of us may already know all of this, but this is where it comes from in Gurbani, our beliefs about creation. Now, the other big question that we're asked, what happens after death? And this is actually answered right up front by the Gurus. So in the second body, Nanak Jiyo Pai Ke Likhnave Taram Bahale. So Guruji explains this that after death, Nanak Jiyo Pai Ke Likhnave Taram Bahale, having created the Ji or the souls, he's installed the Taram Raj, who reads and keeps track of our accounts. So every soul is responsible for the acts that it commits in any particular body. And the Taram Raj is a being that we encounter after death who judges our good and bad deeds. And the Guruji says, Othe sacho hi sach nibre. So the justice in that court of God over which the Taram Raj presides, only the true are judged as true. Chonavak kade jajmalya. And those who are the sinners are picked out and separated. Hauna payan kudeyar. The false, kudeyar means the false. They find no place there. Mohkale dojik chale, and they go to hell with their faces blackened. The justice there is perfect. So here, people may escape justice, but in God's court, nobody escapes justice. But there's a special category for those who are attached to Nam. Tera nairate se jin gaye. Those who are imbued with your name, those who are merged in your name, they win. Har gaye se thaggan wale. But the cheaters, the people who commit fraud, they lose. Likhnave taram bahalya. But the Lord has installed the Dharmraj. The last line summarizes everything, to read and record the accounts. So basically, the lessons from this, we're all responsible for our actions. We can't escape the consequences, but the highest status is given to those who meditate on God's name. But the Asa Ki Vaar is very practical. So these are beliefs about creation and beliefs about what happens after death. But Asa Ki Vaar gives us teachings that we can use here and now, that concern our life right now. And it teaches us, first, it diagnoses the problem. It teaches us that the source of all of our inner and outer conflict is home or ego. Why is this? Because home, or our false sense of self, our ego, gives us the illusion that we are separate from God. And it strengthens the mind. The mind thrives on this ego and makes us into a manmukh, one who only follows their own mind and doesn't take the Guru's wisdom. Somebody who considers themselves very wise and says that they don't need the Guru's wisdom. And Guruji says all coming and going into the world, reincarnation, all talk of pun, pap, goodness or sin belong to the ego, because it depends on the idea that we are separate from God. It depends on home. If we realize that we're one with God and that God is everything, as the Rahau teaches us, as the central idea teaches us, then the ego dissolves. But we can't do this through our own effort. The pathway to doing this is surrendering our ego to the Guru and becoming a Gurmukh. And when we surrender to the Guru and we are imbibing the Guru's wisdom, this is the beginning of living wisely. And Guruji also tells us, he doesn't just leave us with the problem and doesn't give us a solution. He tells us the solution up front. He says, indeed, homa is the biggest disease. He says, homa dirag rog hai. Homa is the biggest disease, daru pi ismai. But this being the biggest disease, it also contains its own medicine. Kirpa kare je apni tak gur ka shabad kamai. If God blesses us, then we practice the shabad. How is homa both the disease and the medicine? Homa is our ego and makes us act. We do things because we have a self-interest in doing them. If we didn't have a self-interest, we wouldn't do it because it's our homa that kind of guides us to act. But if we surrender this homa to the Guru, we still act because of our ego, but then our ego is guided through the Guru's will. It's guided through Gurbani. So we have to surrender our ego, our sense of doership, to the Guru so that the Guru can make us perform righteous, purifying actions. And this is why Guruji says, Kirpa kare je apni ta gur ka shabad kamai. If through this surrender, through this grace, God blesses us, then we can practice the Guru's teachings, and our ego serves the Guru and merges in the divine. Now, how does the ego serve the Guru? How do we become a Gurmukh? Through seva. And Asa Ki Vaar defines what seva is. It may not be what we think it is. We normally associate seva with a certain action, but seva is a whole system. It's a whole state, more so a state of mind than any particular action. And this body here, Sev Kiti Santoki Jini Sacho Sach Tyaya, very specifically defines what seva is. And if seva isn't done according to this definition, it falls under a ritual, which we discussed earlier. So, Sev Kiti Santoki, those who serve feel contented. But what is this service? Jini Sacho Sach Tyaya. At the first and foremost, it must involve meditation on God's name. They meditate on the true Lord. This is the first part of the service. Uni manda pair na rakhyo. What else is part of the service? They do not step foot in the direction of sin. Manda means in bad things or direction of sin. Pair na rakhyo. They don't step in that direction. Kar sokrit taram kamaya. They do good deeds and live righteously. Now, normally when we think of seva, we think of somebody is serving food, somebody's opening a hospital, somebody's doing something that's good for society. But how often do we associate it with all of these things? But according to the standard of Gurbani, it's only seva if it includes all of these things. What else do they do? Uni dunya tode bandhana. They break their attachment to the world. Why is this necessary for seva? A lot of times, seva becomes a means of self-glorification. We want others to see us doing seva. We want our name to be associated with it. We want the newspapers to print that we donated this much to charity. But those who are truly doing seva according to the way that Gurmukh does seva, They break their attachment to the world, hence they don't care about being glorified. Ann pani thoda khaya, and they consume food, they don't consume excessively. Food and water they don't consume in excess. They're mindful of the earth's resources. So what happens when this is done? Tum bakshi se agla nit deve chade sawai. God is the great giver and the forgiver. They don't consider themselves that I am the great giver, I am doing the seva. They acknowledge that God is the great giver. And but they are fulfilled more and more each day through this seva. You give more each and every day. Vardayai vardapaya. By reflecting upon God's greatness through this seva, he is attained. So lessons is most important thing is our state of mind. And it has to include Nam Simran. Otherwise, it's not seva. And it has to be part of a pure lifestyle, earning an honest living, being free of attachment, staying away from sin. If all of these conditions are met, then it can be considered seva. And it doesn't have to be only serving food. It could be helping somebody who needs help in class. It could be smiling at somebody, just because you can see that they're having a hard day. It doesn't have to be something very big. Otherwise, if seva isn't done according to these guidelines, often it can do more harm than good. It can lead to a strengthening of the ego rather than a surrendering of the ego. Now, we can't talk about Asa Ki Vaar without talking about Guru Nanak Dev Ji and the Jinnah. So everybody's heard that Saki, where at age 9, Guru Nanak Dev Ji rejected the sacred thread. He said that I'm not going to wear the sacred thread. So everybody at some point in their life who's grown up in a Sikh household has probably heard that story. But this is Asa Ki Vaar is where the story comes from. And Guruji himself wrote this down for us to see why he's rejecting the Janeu. The reason is he refused it because he said, give me that sacred thread. He said, I'll wear the sacred thread, but give me that sacred thread which is made of virtues and will bring me closer to God. Otherwise, wearing the Janeu falls under the definition of ritual. Why? Because it doesn't involve God's name and it doesn't involve any personal transformation. He not only rejected, we all know that he rejected wearing the Janeu, but he actually told us, this is the Janeu that I'm willing to wear. And so he defined it. So what is a Janeu made of? It's made of cotton or kappa. He says the cotton should be that of mercy or compassion. Santokh Sut, the thread should be made of contentment. Jat Gandhi, the knots in the Janeu should be control of senses. Satvat, and truth should be this twist in the thread. These are all virtues that we have to adopt on the Gurmukh path when we surrender our ego to the Guru. These are the virtues that the Guru tells us to adopt. And Guruji says, "Eh Janeu Jiyaka." This is the sacred thread that our soul can wear. If we go to Dharamraj, our soul is going to be in front of Dharamraj and we present these virtues, then we'll actually get some spiritual benefit. Guruji says, this is the sacred thread of the soul, O Pandit. If you have it, I'm willing to wear it. The physical Janeu breaks, becomes dirty, and is burnt with the body at death. But this Janeu, na hi turte, neither it breaks, na mal lage, neither it becomes dirty, na ih jale na jaye, nor can it be burned. Tanso manas nanaka jo gal chale pai. Blessed are the people who wear such a sacred thread. So this is the sacred thread that Guru Nanak Dev Ji explains to us is the true sacred thread. And this brings us to rejection of hypocrisy. Now, during Guru Nanak Dev Ji's time, religions were exploiting the common man. Pandits or priestly class of all religions were mostly interested in collecting money, and they weren't giving real spiritual guidance to the people. And Guru Nanak Dev Ji describes this state of mankind in the Asa Ki Vaar. Guruji says, "Andar ho chuthe paj bahar, dunya andar fail, ar sat tirat je nav hai, utre nahi mail." He says that those who are false within, andro chute paj bar, but appear honorable on the outside. They may wear religious robes, a certain color on the outside. They have spread throughout the world. Even if they bathe at the 68 sites of pilgrimage, their filth is not washed away. Why is this? Because they consider themselves to be righteous. Somebody who considers themselves to be a sinner, they may become humble and surrender. But somebody who is a hypocrite, who doesn't even know that they're a sinner and they loot others in the name of religion, even if they bathe at all the sites of pilgrimage, they cannot become pure because their plagued with the filth of ego. What is the characteristic of a true devotee? Jin pat andar bahar guddar te pale sansar. Those who have silk on the inside and the rags on the outside are the good ones. They have the true honor on the inside, even if they wear rags on the outside. What are some other characteristics? Te neha laga rab seti dekhne vichar. They embrace love for God and contemplate beholding Him. They care only for God, and in the Lord's rang hasse rang rove chup bhi kar jaye. They live forever in God's love. Parwah nahi kiseh keri baat sache na. They don't care about anything else about except for their true husband, Lord. These are the people that are glorified by Guru Nanak Dev Ji, and not those who may look honorable, may wear religious robes on the outside, but are only interested in their ego or collecting money, basically misleading the public. Now, Guruji, so Asa Ki Vaar covers a lot of topics. So we've so far talked about rituals, we've talked about beliefs about creation, we've talked about seva. But what a common theme that runs throughout all of Asa Ki Vaar is God's name and the power of God's name. And this is what we see in this pauri. Now tera nirankar hai, nai laya narak na jaiye. So in this pauri, Guruji says, your name is the fearless Lord. Chanting your name, Tadin Naam Lande Nal, by reciting your name, we don't go to Narak or hell. That's what we learned about the Dharamraj. Tere naayadate se jin gaye. Whoever chants God's name is the winner here and in the court thereafter. Jio pind sab tisda de khajay aakh gavaiya. The soul and body all belong to God, and asking Him to give us sustenance is a waste because God already knows what we need. Je lode changa apna kar punno neech sadaye. If we yearn for goodness, if we want what's good for our soul, then we should perform good deeds and not feel proud, feel humble. Even if we remove the signs of old age, it still comes in the guise of death, and nobody remains when our time is done. But this basically talks about the glory of God's name. It can save us from going to hell, and trying to escape, for example, by coloring our hair or removing the signs of aging, it doesn't change the reality. It only blinds us to the truth. It prevents us from living wisely. We have limited time, so making the most of our breaths by reciting Nam is what's important. And in relation to this theme, Guruji talks about further living wisely. Pauri jit seveyan sukh paiye, so sahib sada samaliye. How should we live our life practically? So we should live our mind in service. So serving Him, peace is obtained. So meditate upon that, Lord. Jit kita paye apna. Guruji poses a question. Jit kita paye apna sakal buri kyo kale. Now we know through Gurbani that we have to answer for our deeds. So why do we do evil deeds if we have to suffer here? We have to endure dukh here and in the court of the Dharmaraj. Manda mulna kichi de lamme nadar nihalya. If we truly have foresight, if we took the long view, we wouldn't do any evil at all. Jo sahib nalna hariye te veha pasa talia. So we have to play. Guruji talks about playing the game of life. Guruji says, throw the dice in such a way that we shall not lose. Who loses? We already know who wins. Tere naida te se jin gaye. Whoever is imbued with God's name wins. The one who loses, har gaye se thaggan wale. Those who are involved in fraud, hypocrisy, bad deeds, those are the people who lose. So Guruji says, "Jyo sahib nalna hariye te veha pasar talia." Throw the game of life, the dice of the game of life in such a way that we do not lose. Kich lahe upar kalye. Only do those deeds which bring you profit. This is the practical advice that Guruji gives us. So doing evil deeds only harms us. And if we have a far-sighted outlook, then we don't plant even the seed of evil. Now, what is the seed of evil? It's evil thoughts. And what transforms us at the level of our thoughts? Surrendering our mind to the Guru, and the Guru gives us the teaching of Nam. And by reciting Nam, Nam transforms our mind to godly virtues. And so we don't even think about doing sin. And the most profitable actions that are described are Nam and Seva, which lead to enduring peace and happiness. Now, the last pauri describes the ultimate truth. So Guruji has described the spiritual journey, the importance of the Guru, the importance of Nam and Seva, social evils. But the last pauri connects us with the ultimate truth. Pauri vade kiya vadaiyan kich kehna kehan na jaye. So this means the greatness of God cannot be described. Remember, the Rahau was also about the greatness of God. And it all comes back to the praises and the greatness of God. It cannot be described. So karta kadar kareem te jia rijak sambai. God is the powerful and benevolent creator and gives sustenance to all. Sai kar kamavni tur choti tinne pai. The mortals only do the work that has been predestined for them from the beginning. Nanak ek ki bahari aur duji nahi jaye. Except for the one God, there's no other place. There's no second doer. There's no second creator except for the one. So kare jit se rajaye. And ultimately, God does whatever he wills. Everybody is acting according to God's will and nothing else. So if we're doing good deeds, if we're reciting Nam, it's all God's will, and we shouldn't take pride in any of those actions. But ultimately, whether it's the Rahau or whether it's the last pauri, Guruji talks about the greatness of God while teaching us so many other things. So basically, God's will is beyond our control, and surrendering our homet, what we discussed earlier, to the Guru and following the path of being a Gurmat helps us emerge in this hukum. Conclusion. So Asa Ki Vaar is about God, the relationship of God and mankind, and the power of God's name. It speaks fearlessly against rituals of the time, whether it's bathing at sites of pilgrimage, wearing the janeu, hypocrisy, and those same lessons, that same light can be applied to any religious action today. It contains valuable life lessons which teach us how to live a purposeful life of peace and happiness. And it gives us very clear guidance on what our priorities in life should be, literally how we should play the game of life. And it protects us from roadblocks on the spiritual journey. And it's a very unique Bani within Guru Granth Sahib Ji.